Good afternoon and welcome to everyone joining us for this live Q&A about the cost of living crisis, benefits and other financial support. My name is James Bailey. I'm the Senior Information Editor at the MS Society. I'm really pleased to say we have with us one of our MS Benefits advisors, Julian. He'll be answering your questions, and I will introduce Julian properly in a moment. But first, just a couple of tiny technical points. If your stream stops working, don't worry about that. Try refreshing your browser. Check the comments section for any updates, or return to either the main MS Society Facebook page or the YouTube page. Now, you might be aware we recently launched our Breaking Point campaign, which was calling on our governments to provide better support during the cost of living crisis. And we've seen many of you have asked us about PIP applications and appeals. And you've got questions about the financial support that's available, of course. So we'll try and get through as many of your questions as we can. But if we don't get through all your questions, don't worry. After the Q&A, we'll go through all of those and we'll get back to you in the comments. And remember, of course, as well, that our MS Helpline, that's available to you as well. And we have lots of information on our website too. So let's get started. We're really lucky, as I say, to have Julian with us. He's one of the MS Benefits advisors through our MS Helpline. And Julian, would you mind giving us a quick introduction about yourself and also just tell us how someone from the MS community can get in touch if they need to?
Sure, thanks, James. I'm Julian, and I've been one of the MS Benefits advisors on the MS Helpline for 3.5 years now. And if you want to get some benefits advice from us, then you can call the MS Helpline on 0808 800 8000. Or you can email us. And we do advise people across the UK, so England, Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland, and all our advice is by phone or email.
Thank you, Julian. Now, we've already had some great questions coming in through in the last few days, so we'll get started on those. But while we're online, please do add any other questions that you might have to the comments section on the live stream. And I actually see some are coming through already, so we'll get through to as many of those as we can. And remember, you can find all the latest information on our website. That's mssociety.org.uk. And as Julian's mentioned, on the helpline, you can call the helpline on 0808 800 8000 if you need support or to speak with one of our MS Benefits advisors. And again, the full details of all the MS Society services, they are on our website. So we're going to get started with the first question. This one has come in. I'm really struggling with the cost of living. Can I claim any benefits? So quite a general one.
Sure. So what you might be entitled to will depend on your individual circumstances. So I would always encourage you to call the helpline to find out exactly what is applicable to you. So, for example, one of the things that will affect what you could claim is whether you live in Scotland or the rest of the UK, because they have a different disability benefit there for working age people called adult disability payment. And so one common benefit that people with MS might be eligible for is personal independence payment or adult disability payment. And that's not based on your income, your savings. It's not based on your partner's income or savings. It's just based on how your health affects you. So, for example, whether it affects things like your ability to prepare a meal, to wash, to dress, to walk short distances. So that's one of the types of benefits that could be available to you. If you're on a low income or don't have any income at all, no savings or limited savings, you might be entitled to a means tested benefit like universal credit or council tax support. Do be careful with universal credit, because if you're already claiming other benefits like tax credits or income related ESA, it will end those. So if you're not claiming any benefits at all, universal credit could be worth looking at. If you are claiming any of the old benefits, then I would say do call us to check whether changing over would be a good idea. And then there's other types of benefits that are linked to your national insurance contribution. So one of them is called New Style ESA. So that could be relevant if for example, you've just stopped working, but you're not, maybe your partner's working. But yeah, do call us if you want to check what you're entitled to. And just to say, in terms of the specific cost of living crisis at the moment, some of you who are already on benefits, for example, personal independence payment or universal credit, will have already received some cost of living payments from the government. And there might be a couple more later this year. So that is an automatic process. But if you want to check whether you've got what you should have got, then obviously do feel free to give us a call or email us.
Thanks, Julian. I've got another question here, a little bit more specific. I think I'm going to leave work for health reasons. Would I be able to claim any benefits? This is someone who has MS.
Sure. So the first thing I say is, if you're in a job, then, you should be entitled to statutory sick pay for up to 26 weeks. So it's worth exploring whether you can stay on at work and claim sick pay. You might also have enhanced sick pay at work. And we have got an MS legal advisor that can advise on your employment rights and things like reasonable adjustments at work that it might be worth looking into, as well as considering leaving. If you do end up leaving work because of your MS, then you might be entitled to some of the benefits I've mentioned before. So PIP or adult disability payment, possibly universal credit, although, as I say, be aware if you're on the old benefit system already to check if that could be affected. And I mentioned employment and support allowance. So again, that one, it's not affected by savings, it's not affected by your partner's income. What it's affected by is whether you've paid national insurance contributions in the last 2 tax years before the current calendar year. So it's a bit of a mouthful, but so if you apply in 2022 for it, say you've just left work, then you need to make sure that you've paid national insurance contributions from April 2019 to April 2021. And then you can claim employment support allowance. It will start off at £77 a week. You'll need to provide a fit note from your doctor to show that you aren't able to work anymore. And then you'll have a medical assessment, after which, if they see you as kind of long-term sick or very sick, you might be put in the support group, which would increase the amount you get to £117 a week. So it's worth remembering it, just because some people only find out about it after they've left work quite a while ago, and then they don't qualify. So you do have to apply quite soon after leaving work. So again, if you think you could be entitled, do give us a call and we can advise you further.
Thanks, Julian. Another question here. I recently applied for PIP and was turned down. Can I challenge the decision if I think that was wrong?
Sure, yeah. So there's a 2-stage process to challenging PIP decisions. The first stage is called a mandatory reconsideration, which is where you ask the DWP, the PIP team, to look at the decision again. You can do this by phone or you can do it by writing to them. If you call us, we can give you sort of further advice on what you might want to put. If you're writing to them or speaking to them on the phone, it's often quite good to put it down in writing just so you're clear that they know your reasons. And it's also really helpful to get medical evidence. So PIP is a points-based system, so you need to score at least 8 points for either daily living, so things like preparing food, washing, dressing, or mobility, so things like moving short distances, or whether you can go places on your own. So it's worth thinking about those points when you write the letter and when you're trying to get medical evidence. If you do a mandatory reconsideration, you have to do that within a month of getting the decision letter from PIP, although if you have got a good reason for being late, then that would usually be accepted. If you do the mandatory reconsideration and they say, no, we're still not going to give you PIP, don't worry, you can still do an appeal. And appeals have quite a high chance of success. I think it's 63% at the moment. And an appeal is judged at a tribunal by an independent judge, rather than the DWP themselves, and you'll get an opportunity to explain why you think the decision was wrong, and it also give you a bit more time to try and get medical evidence to show that you do meet the criteria. But again, do contact us so we can talk it through with you and provide any extra advice that you need.
Thank you. It sounds like there's quite a process to this, and we're aware that the process for a lot of benefits can be daunting for people. We've had 2 specific questions actually come in, one before today, but also Viv on Facebook today has come in with a question, both asking about that being scrutinised when you're applying for PIP, and I know that applies to some other benefits as well. I'll read out Viv's question that's coming on Facebook just now. I want to claim PIP for my MS and fibromyalgia, but I find the process so daunting and feel if I get interviewed on a good day, in inverted commas, I'll be rejected. Do they take into account that on occasions you may have a good day? I feel the money would really help to go towards therapy I pay for to help me get mobile.
Sure. So so PIP it can be quite a lengthy process, and it does ask quite a lot of questions. So it's understandable that people are a bit kind of trepidatious about applying for it. But in terms of good days and bad days, PIP does try and acknowledge fluctuating conditions like MS by saying it's not that you have to, for example, not be able to prepare a meal every single day of the year. What they're interested in is what you're like at least 50% of the days of the year. So often what we recommend is, if you can, to keep a diary, just because that can give you an idea of whether most days a week you can do something or you can't do it, or what difficulties you might have. You might want to measure how far you can walk. Keep a note of when people need to help you with things. So keeping a diary can be helpful. But yeah, so if you have a good day at the assessment, then you can always explain that. So you can say, well, today I'm able to do this, but actually most days, for example, five of the days last week I wasn't able to do this. Or generally speaking, in a year, I find this difficult most of the days. So as long as it's most of the days of the year, then it is relevant for PIP. Unfortunately, for people who, for example, maybe have one relapse or have two relapses a year, and maybe so for 2 months of that year, they might really struggle to do anything. If the rest of the year they don't really have any difficulties with anything, they probably wouldn't qualify, because they wouldn't meet that threshold of at least 50% of the days of the year. So that's to keep in mind. I know it's very tricky with MS because you can't really predict what's going to happen in future often. But yeah, one thing you can do is try and keep a diary, so you've got an idea of whether the majority of the time you do find something difficult. And obviously do give us a call if you want to talk any of this through and to check whether you think you'd qualify.
Thank you. Yeah, and a question also came in advance of this Q&A about the amount that people get for the payments for PIP in particular. They're asking whether PIP will see an increase, because we know obviously things are getting more and more stretched now. Are benefits being increased in line with inflation is the overall question they have.
So unfortunately, we just don't know. Obviously, we've just got a new Prime Minister, but nothing has yet been announced. Lots of disability charities, including the MS Society, are campaigning to increase benefits in line with inflation. And obviously the MS Society's Breaking Point campaign is saying, benefits should be increased to meet the extra costs of disability for people with MS. But yeah, unfortunately, we just don't know at the moment. But the MS Society website is a good place to go to look for updates.
Thank you. And someone's asked here, they get a small medical pension and full PIP, they say. So I'm guessing that's the higher rates that they receive.
Yeah.
Can they get anything else?
So possibly. So, for example, if you left work recently, and so you've got those national insurance contributions paid from April 2019 to April 21, if you're applying this year, then you might be entitled to employment and support allowance. There are rules about pensions. So if your pension is over £85 a week, then anything over £85 a week, half of that would be taken off your employment and support allowance. So it depends how much your pension was. And again, you might be entitled to means tested benefits like universal credit or council tax support, depending on how much savings you've got and depending on the level of the income that you have, and if you've got a partner, the level of their income. So again, do feel free to give us a call to find out if there is anything that you could get.
Thank you. There's a lot of things for people to bear in mind and to check when they're looking into all of this on specific benefits and just to see what they can claim. Apart from coming through to you guys on the helpline there, the MS Benefits Advisors, are there other places they can go? Do the benefits calculators help that are online sometimes?
Yeah, so there's online benefits calculators. So they're quite good for means tested benefits and things like council tax support and universal credit. So we definitely give those out to people if you want to kind of do your own calculations. So yeah, gov.uk has a link to a few benefits calculators, and that's really good for council tax support because each local council has its own way of calculating council tax support. So it's one of the main ways to check whether or not you're eligible.
Great.
And you can also, I mean, aside from online, and as if you want kind of local advice, you can also go to places like your local citizens advice, or you might have other local charities that offer advice, and they might offer face-to-face advice. I think some local MS societies can sometimes have an arrangement with, say, a local advice agency where they've got a benefits advisor available 1 day a week, but that is very kind of location specific and will depend where you live.
So worth asking local groups if they can help as well. Yeah, brilliant.
And there's the Pontio team in Wales. So there's a few advisors in Wales that can help.
Lovely, thank you. Someone's asked here, they say they work full time. Are they entitled to any benefits? They've got MS.
Yep. So again, the disability benefits like personal independence payment or adult disability payment in Scotland are not affected by your earnings. So if you are working but you do have difficulties with some of the activities that the disability benefits look at, like preparing food, washing, dressing, walking short distances, and then that could be something you're entitled to. You might also be entitled to means-tested benefits to top up your earnings. For example, if you are renting or you've got children, then it might be that you might still qualify for that, even though you're on a full-time wage. So you can use the benefits calculator to check, or you can give us a call.
Thank you. And someone asking here, they're going through a tribunal for PIP and they're off on maternity leave. What other benefits are there to help them?
Sure. So if you're on maternity leave from work, then you may be entitled to statutory maternity pay or enhanced maternity pay from your work. So that's something to look into first of all. When your child is born, then you could claim child benefit for your child. If you're in Scotland, there might be a top-up payment that you can get. Depending on your kind of overall living situation, you might be entitled to means-tested benefits like universal credit, particularly if you're paying rent, you've got other children. But again, do be careful with universal credit. If you are claiming old benefits like tax credits, then they would stop if you claimed universal credit. So do get advice before doing that. But if you're not currently claiming any benefits, possibly universal credit could be relevant. And then again, it depends on the level of your income. But sometimes there might be other additional things that you could claim once you've had a child. But yeah, do feel free to give us a call to ask for more advice.
Great, thank you. And just to be clear on the universal credit, for some people in some situations, even if they are getting the older benefits, it might still be the best option for them. Is that right? Universal credit isn't necessarily a worse option. Is that right?
It really depends on your circumstances. So some people might be worse off, some people might be better off. For people on tax credits, it's worth remembering that tax credits don't take savings into account. So, you might have over £16,000 savings and get tax credits and then claim universal credit. You're not entitled because you have more than £16,000 savings, but you will not be able to reclaim tax credits. So it's good to check in different situations. But yeah, there's some ways in which universal credit is a bit more generous than the old system, but other ways where it's less generous. So it's just kind of on a case-by-case basis. So do call us if you want to do a better off calculation.
Great, thanks for clarifying that. Someone's asked here, can I apply for PIP if I'm still capable of working? So I guess whether or not they're working, but they're capable of working.
Sure. So PIP is not affected by whether you're working or not, or whether you're able to work. As I say, it's just focused on things like personal care, so preparing food, washing, dressing, remembering to do things like pay your bills, and walking short distances, being able to go places by yourself, things like that. So somebody could be doing a full-time job but struggle with those activities. And some people are working full-time and getting enhanced PIP. So it's definitely not something to rule out. Obviously, the only thing to sort of bear in mind is, if for example, you can't walk very far, but it sounds like your job involves you walking quite far, you'd have to explain, if you were getting reasonable adjustments at work, for example. So, they'll probably ask you questions about what you do at work, but as long as that's all consistent with the difficulties that you've got, then yeah, you could still get PIP.
Great, thank you. We've got a few questions that have come in while we've been speaking on Facebook. So I'll just read a few of those out. Carla on Facebook has when I did a review form for PIP, I let them know my needs had changed and that I was worse due to a new diagnosis of MS. So she had previous conditions before that. And they took the low mobility off her. What should she do? So she let them know the new circumstances, and she explained that she was worse due to the new diagnosis of MS, but they took the low mobility off. What should she do?
So you can challenge the decision. There is always a risk with challenging a decision where you are already getting PIP, because they can look at the whole decision again. So it's not guaranteed that it would stay the same or increase. There's always a chance it could decrease. So that's why getting really good medical evidence is really helpful. So if you can get really good medical evidence that shows that you should have got the mobility side of PIP as well as what they did award you, then you can do a mandatory reconsideration. And yeah, if you do want to talk this through or discuss it, then do feel free to give us a call via the helpline.
Thanks. We've got a question here which mentions whether carers allowance and whether someone who's helping to look after someone can get any extra help here. Charlotte on Facebook asks, I find it difficult with being on PIP and ESA only. My partner earns more than the cutoff, so we can't claim carers allowance for him. What can they do to get extra help?
So if you do need help in terms of care needs, then you could ask the local council for a needs assessment. And again, if you want more advice on kind of the community care side of things, then you can speak to the MS legal officer if you live in England and Wales. Unfortunately, yeah, Carers Allowance does have those rules. And I know Carers UK has sort of done a few campaigns to try and improve the situation for unpaid carers. Depending on the level of your kind of household income, it's possible you could be entitled to universal credit. So you could use an online benefits calculator or call us if you want us to check, because universal credit does have a carers element as part of it. And so it doesn't matter if you're earning over the threshold for carers allowance in universal credit, but obviously your overall income will be looked at. But yeah, so it's just worth getting a benefits check to see if there's any other benefits that you might be able to get. And again, to remember council tax support, if you're on a low income, you might be entitled to a reduction in that.
Thank you. We've just had a comment come in on Facebook from Patricia, which is a combination of praise for you and your colleagues, Julian, and also passing on some potentially very useful information for people in a particular situation. So that it says here, MS Benefits Helpline advisors were really helpful to me to apply for national insurance credits to top up state pension. And I was beyond the 2-year deadline to apply for ESA. Definitely worth looking into this if relevant. So I guess you'd echo the praise, I'm sure, but also the advice, most importantly.
For sure, yeah. A lot of people don't know about that. So yeah, so with ESA, if you want to get paid it, you do have to have paid the national insurance contributions in the last 2 tax years before the current calendar year. So if you do miss that, you can still apply for ESA knowing you won't get paid, but get your national insurance contributions paid, which will count towards your state pension. And that is really important for people, particularly if they've had to leave work quite young and so haven't got a full national insurance record for state pension.
Thank you. So thank you, Patricia and Julian, for that. I'll read another question we've got here. I think we've just still got just about time. I've just been accepted for PIP, says Sam on Facebook. Does that mean I'll be automatically put into the support group for ESA?
Unfortunately not. There isn't kind of link up. So yeah, if you apply for ESA, then you'll have to do a different type of medical assessment, which looks more at your capability for work rather than things like washing, dressing, preparing food. Some of the things are a bit similar, like they both look at how far you can walk, but they assess it slightly differently. So yeah, but if you do want to kind of find out more, there is some really good fact sheets on the MS Society website, or you can give us a call as well if you want to talk through anything about the process.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got the step-by-step guides if you're having to fill in those forms to help take you through the assessment process with that. Pete on Facebook has got in touch. My wife is about to stop working as a teacher. Hopefully she'll get the full enhanced pension. Are there any benefits which she can get which aren't means tested?
So ESA is not means tested, but as I say, there are rules about pensions. So it depends on the level of her pension. So if it's over £85 a week, which it sounds like it might be, then half of anything over that will be deducted from the ESA. So that starts at £77 a week and could go up to £117 a week. So it will kind of depend. You can call us if you want us to double check that for you. But that's the main non-means tested benefit, apart from PIP or adult disability payment. So I don't know if your wife's already claiming PIP or adult disability payment. So if you're in Scotland, it would be adult disability payment. In the rest of the UK, personal independence payment. So that one is also not means tested. So yeah, worth looking into PIP or adult disability payment and ESA.
Thank you. I think we've got time for just one more question that's come in here. Just see if we've got this one here. Yeah, it's someone, Graham on Facebook, saying he's tried twice for PIP, but he doesn't feel that they're acknowledging anything that he tells them in the assessment. So that's obviously frustrating, and they're saying that he can still drive when he clearly feels that they can't and doesn't feel he's being listened to in that. Is this something you come across from people? Is this a difficulty people have with the assessment? And do you have any advice on how to get past that?
Yeah, it is quite common, unfortunately. And again, I think something the MS Society has been campaigning on is kind of when the assessors kind of make kind of assumptions that they won't necessarily share with you during the assessments. They might think, oh, because you can drive, you can therefore do this, but they don't say, I've made that assumption, so you can't explain whether that's true or not. But yeah, whether or not you can drive shouldn't mean that you can or can't get PIP. It's all about whether you have difficulties with those activities. Unfortunately, we often find that even if you've kind of explained your case very well at assessment and in the form, if you don't have medical evidence that kind of really supports that and goes into that detail that PIP asks you about, so, you know, whether or not you can chop vegetables, you know, whether you need help to get in and out of a bath or shower, you know, how far you can walk, then they may not give you PIP even though you've demonstrated that you qualify. So we would always say, like, if you're able to get some detailed medical evidence that pertains to the PIP activities themselves, so preparing food, washing, dressing, walking short distances, and is quite detailed on that, then that can really help you get PIP first time round rather than having to challenge the decision.
Thank you. We've got one last question here, although a few people are asking about this. This question from Lauren on Facebook: I get enhanced PIP, but it's only till 2024. So I know a lot of benefits can have this time limit on them, but in particular PIP, when they've done all that assessment, why is that up till 2024 in this case?
Yeah, so again, I think something that MS Society and other disability has been campaigning on to try and get kind of longer awards for people with MS, particularly if it's sort of progressive MS. And there's been some movement. So a lot of people, well, a few people now are getting 10-year awards where previously they might not have done. And then I think if it's a 10-year award, it's likely to, when they reassess it, it's a bit less likely that you'd have an assessment. It might just be based on the form or medical evidence, not guaranteed. But yeah, it's just frustrating that does happen. So all we can really advise is, when you do have a review for your PIP, see if you can get any medical evidence that specifically says, it probably said it anyway, which just says, I think the PIP should be awarded indefinitely or for 10 years because these symptoms are not going to improve. And like, if you can flag it in the form and at the assessment, it doesn't guarantee anything, but it's sometimes a bit hard to know how they decide how long to award it. So if you can kind of prompt them to give you the longest possible award in the review, then that could help.
Thanks, Julian. That sounds like really useful advice. And can I just clarify, is there an indefinite award that's possible on PIP as it stands, or is 10 years the longest anyone might get?
So yeah, I think they're kind of seen as the same thing, like 10 years indefinite. So it's not really disability living allowance, where most people got indefinite awards. But my understanding is that if it's indefinite, it will probably get looked at every 10 years. If that makes sense. If you are over state pension age, then you're meant to only get reviewed again every 10 years, but it's like a light touch review, but no one's had those yet. They're only just deciding what that will look like.
Thanks for clarifying that for me at least. And we are just about out of time for our Q&A session. Thank you very much, Julian, for joining us today. I hope everyone found that as useful as I did. I hope it's helped answer some of your questions. But if your question hasn't been answered, as we said, we'll respond to all the questions in the comments after this. And do get in touch with our MS helpline if you want to speak with one of our benefits advisors, or you just want to speak to someone on the helpline as well. It's 0808 800 8000. And all the details are at mssociety.org.uk/helpline. And of course, you can find lots of information about benefits on our information pages. And that might help you answer specific queries that haven't been answered today. Thank you all very much for joining us and for your questions. Thanks again to Julian. Thanks and goodbye.